So today, I wanted to take a little break. I'm going to continue next week and our journey through the Bible, where we will be continuing in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 6, next week. But this week, I wanted to do a little mini study on faith, because I think faith is a very, very important part of our walk with God. And before we get started getting into faith, let's just find out what is faith. And so we're going to go to the Bible on this word faith. We go to Hebrews chapter 11. It says, verse 1, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So then it says, for by it the elders obtain a good report. Through faith we understand that the world was framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were made of things which do not appear. And so I like the way the Bible gives us a definition of what faith is, and it goes right back to the source of all faith, the source of all faith. And it talks about here when the world was framed, and it talks about in the beginning when God made everything. Now let's get an understanding of what God did in the beginning. God spoke things into existence, and things came as God spoke them. Unlike man has to take something that already exists and create things. That's what man do. But God created something out of nothing. So it just mentions here that through faith, in verse 3, we understand that the world was framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things that do appear. So it was things that did not exist, and God spoke it into existence. And so we can't go any further than we go to the father of faith in the Bible, and we're going to look at Abraham, the father of faith, as it been said by many people, scholars, and it says Abraham was the father of faith. And so Hebrews chapter 11 verse 8 picks up. It says, by faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing whither he went. So here it gives us a display, gives us an idea of what faith looks like. It says Abraham went out not knowing whither he went. So Abraham did not, God said, go, leave from your country, leave from the people that are around you, and go to a place where I will show you. And it says Abraham went. Now Abraham did not, God did not give Abraham the blueprints, the plans. God gave a promise to Abraham, and Abraham was going on the promises of God, to a place where he didn't know where he was going. God was just showing him one step after the other, and then he was gonna show him as he went. So then he goes on to say, by faith he sojourned in the land of promises, as a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promises. For he looked for a city which has foundation, whose builders and maker is God. And I like here, so in verse 11, so that it sandwiches here Abraham, and now it talks about Abraham's wife. Let's look at her faith, how she made what they call here this is called the book. This is called the chapter of the faith chapter. And it says, through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past the age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Now, we have to go back to the story of Abraham and Sarah. God promised them a son. And it wasn't until Abraham was 100 plus years, or 100 years old, and Sarah was 90, that Sarah conceived. And so that took some time to really come to pass. So it took a measure of faith. You know, the thing with faith is that faith, it talks about, is not, it's what you hope for, but not what you don't see. And faith goes from, what's the word? Your faith growth. That's what I want. Your faith grow over time. You know, God made a promise, and it took faith for Sarah and Abraham to believe what God said, but it took faith, continuous faith, to continue to believe what God says. You know, the Bible talks about faith without works is dead. So with faith, it's a part of doing also. And so verse 12, it says, therefore sprang there even of one in him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky, and multitude as the sand which is by the seashore, numerous. Now he's talking about the promise that God gave to Abraham about his descendants, that they will be as many as the stars are in the sky. That would be his descendants. Then it says here in verse 13, these all died in faith. Where it's talking about some Noah, Abraham, Sarah, and it's going back to, it says all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen their afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims of the earth. So Abraham. And so, I mean, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Just faith. We need faith to walk this walk with God. It's very, very important that we have faith, because it's also, the Bible also said, without faith, it's impossible to please God. So that tells us that faith is very, very, very important when it comes to God. Faith is very important. So also it says, and let me find it here. Faith, Ephesians. Okay, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, it says, "For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourself. It is the gift of God. By grace are ye saved through faith." So grace, but it's through faith. And that's not of itself. It's a gift. So it's a gift from God. But faith is the driving force when it comes to salvation. So it's very, very important that we have faith, because it says it's impossible to please God if you don't have faith. So faith is important. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about, that's what I want to talk about today, faith. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, leave me a comment down below. If you have a comment, just leave me a comment. Subscribe.